Welcome everyone to yet another ThursdAI. Today is August 24, and we've had yet another incredible week in everything related to AI news. And we're gonna give a brief introduction and then talk about the folks on stage who are co-hosts and panelists here and experts. And we will ask you to follow ThursdAI. That's also a speaker on stage. That's the main brand account that will be posting all the updates and the links and everything. And if you follow that, I think it's pinned to the top. There was a list of all the friends and experts who join the stage from week to week and help me and you and everyone of us learn together and get updated on everything AI related. Because there's a lot, and there's a lot from different areas as well. And so we're very cross-discipline here, right? We have folks from every which way, and we cover AI updates from multiple disciplines. So today we're gonna cover exciting things from the field of voice and vision and open source LLMs and some updates about AI, Art, and Diffusion. And we're gonna update about big company LLMs. There's some exciting update there. And there's one update about agent that's not significant, but I want to just touch on. So I think this is how we'll start with voice, because just personally, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. And we have just incredible news about voice this week from Meta. Just before I get started, I want to introduce Yam to the stage. Yam, welcome, dude. How are you? How was your week?
Fine. How are you? How are you doing?
Doing extremely well today. I want to find seamless, and then
that's yours, your field.
Yes, I flew away when this happened. Meta AI has been our bestie this week. Really big shout out to Big Zach and Jan LeCun and whole fair organization within Meta for providing for us and giving us, and most of it is open source and even some of it is commercially available. So we'll start with them and we'll start with voice. Meta has been doing incredible things in the field of voice, and we've talked about previous models multiple times. They're on a mission to remove language barriers from the world, which is incidentally a mission that I share personally with Targum, that video, which I founded specifically for this purpose. And just a brief reminder about Targum. Targum is a tool that uses Whisper, right? Whisper from OpenAI. OpenAI open sourced Whisper a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, I think last September. And Whisper is automatic speech recognition. So you give it some speech, like what we're doing right now, and then it gives you way better text. And Yam and me, we know this very closely to our hearts. Sometimes the accent goes in a way, and sometimes Siri does not understand. And Whisper came through with a big breakthrough that understood accents very well. And now we have a Whisper competitor, if not something that beats Whisper, from Meta. Unfortunately, not commercially licensed yet, but we have seamless M4T model from Meta AI, which is incredible. It's really mind-blowing, because just to see the progress from less than a year ago when Whisper came out. What is seamless M4T and what does it do? Seamless M4T is a multitask, multimodal model. It's really hard to say these things, especially with an accent, that takes in voice or text, and on the output, it can generate text, can generate speech, right? So those of you who use the LLaMa AI, those of you who use the Play.ht, there's now a model that does all of this. It can translate, right? So what I do in Targum is multiple pipelines of models, starting with Whisper that I translate to English. And then I use this English, and then I run this through a translator, also from Meta, but don't tell them. And now we have this one model that's smaller than both of these, that runs in, you can run inference on just one, just on it. And it does all of these tasks, including translation and including translated speech. This is the last part. Translated speech just blew my mind, okay? Because essentially, imagine me just talking with you in English, right? And imagine my mom just listening to this, and it's all in Russian to her. And she knows Russian, and she doesn't know English. And this is what Meta basically gave us, basically. And I say basically because it has limitations, like everything, right? So keep in mind that it definitely has limitations. However, You're all welcome to try this. There's a demo that they released, and you record a piece of your voice and you select a bunch of languages, and then it gives you translations to those languages in text, and also a voice segment that does not sound like you, but we know it's possible. We've talked about voice cloning before. And it just says what you said in different language, and it happens in seconds. And to me, that's incredible. To me, this is like one huge step forward towards a world without language barriers. To me, from the technical perspective of this, the fact that it's one model and there's three sizes of this model they released, the top one, I think it beats Whisper on almost anything, or comes very close to. This will remains to be seen. Those tests will be happening. But this one model also generates text. It also translates text, right? The best translating model that I found, and trust me, I went on a search for this, was Facebook's NLLB. It's called No Language Left Behind. It's on Hugging Face. We have two folks from Hugging Face I want to shout out on stage. Zenova, welcome. VP, welcome. And I love that Facebook shares everything on Hugging Face, and I love how easy it is to use. And the easiest and the best model to use for translation, a unified model that translates a bunch of languages, is NLLB, I think 2.2 billion, and that's also from Meta. And now they have this unified model that it doesn't only translate text, it understands text, understands speech, translates it, and then also generates speech. I think I couldn't have expected the one model to do all this, and I'm just blown away. So I'll pause here. Go ahead, Vivi. What's up? Nice to see you, man. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm VB. I work at Hugging Face as a machine learning engineer, as well as a developer advocate in the open source audio team. And I was part of the sort of like the release team, which partnered with Meta to release Seamless M4T. And you can see that all the M4T artifacts are on the Hugging Face hub, as well as we have a nice space that you can play around with. The demo that Meta released has like very few tasks that the model can do, but the space on Hugging Face Hub is feature complete, and we threw in a bunch of A100s for anyone to try it out. That's the intro. Well, okay, so I'm gonna keep it quick. And one of the things that that completely blew my mind, and bit that you covered a while back, was about NLLB, right? So first of all, like what Seamless M4T does is it is like a multimodal sort of translation model, right? And what it does is it takes a modality, so it could be like speech or text. It passes it through either a speech encoder or a text encoder, right? And then both of these encoders, whatever modality you pass on, like create a hidden representation in the form of units, right? So that's the unit Y model essentially. And then what you do is from these units are essentially discrete representations of either speech or text. And these are language agnostic, right? So then once you have these units, you then convert these back into text or speech, right? So essentially we go from any of the supported languages. So those are 100 at this point. And so you go from any of those 100 languages to this unit. And then from these units, you then go to speech or text, essentially. And this sort of reduces the burden on the model considerably. First of all, because like you're essentially like your objective function for the model is quite simple here. It's to just go to these discrete units that helps you reduce, and first of all, reduce the vocabulary that you have to go to. And second of all, also reduces the overall amount of data and also the amount of compute you need to train such a model. And so this is, from what I think, this is just the start of a series of models, in my opinion, which would increasingly be capturing more and more languages, right? Just to connect the dots, this is from the same team, or well, a similar team within the same group at Meta, a while back released massively multilingual speech models, right? Which had a coverage of, I think, upwards of 1,000 languages. Don't quote me on that because I'm not sure.
1100, yeah.
Oh, 1,100, yeah. And so this sort of builds on like that amount of data, and also the all the sort of things that they learned from there. Plus, it uses NLLB tokenizers, right? No Language Left Behind is a really huge project within Meta just to try and democratize information and knowledge as much as possible. And from what I've just purely from the information available outside and like out in the wild, I think they're gonna have an internal variant of Seamless M4D be deployed in downstream applications like WhatsApp, Meta, Facebook, and so on in the coming 1 to 2 years, right? So this is, I think it's truly revolutionary. Of course, in terms of the audio, we're not there yet, but at the same time, with with even their repository right now, you can randomly initialize the weights and fine tune the entire model end to end on your own data set, right? And soon, like within a week or two, we'll have full end to end Hugging Face transformers integration as well. And so you can do that with that as well. So there's like lots of use cases that this unlocks. Last thing is that the weights that were released are CC by NC, meaning that they don't allow commercial usage as of now. And but yeah, I can pretty much say it with confidence that there are in the near future, you can see quite a lot of open source replications of the same architecture, and pretty much everything same, but with data which is permissively sourced and allows for commercial usage as well. Yeah, we'll end with that.
Vivi, thank you so much for joining. And I definitely found you, at least on my Twitter, via, I think, was it the Whisper FineTune sprint or something in FineTune?
Yeah, I think it was that.
Yeah, and so this was a while ago. And for folks who don't know or participate in this, Vivi and some other folks in Hugging Face led a sprint on Hugging Face to fine-tune Whisper to specific languages, right? Because there's only so much data that OpenAI collected for different languages, and there's so many languages in the world, and many folks came and just beat the state of the art by just continuing training Whisper. And I assume that the same will happen to these models as well, and we just like see an improvement from there. To just so first of all, thank you for coming, thank you for joining. You're always welcome. Second of all, I wanted to ask you, before I get to Yam in just a second, I want to ask you about the data that they also released. Could you speak about the data set and the data? And you mentioned briefly that it's like the data is commercially viable to use. Could you speak about the data set that they also released?
So in terms of data set, what they released is not the actual data, but they have released how they collected the data. So there's a bit of difference. I think they use Common Crawl, like C4, and they were like a couple more for like text as well as like for speech. I'm not too sure. Like I don't remember it as well. However, like all the information to reproduce the data is available by them, right? And of course, normally not an individual, like one individual cannot really just replicate the entire data set from scratch. However, I know of at least 1 or 2 organizations who are actively working on replicating the entire data set. And of course, because like Meta is Meta, and with a big name comes like a lot of responsibility as well. So they can't really just like open source the data because it may or may not contain a lot of commercially non-permissible data as well. However, and a replication of that sort of withholds any sort of implications on them, right? So that's why I said that I know of at least 1 or 2 efforts which are trying to replicate the same amount of data. There are also like other separate efforts to create corpus of the size of Whisper as well. So yeah, I would say just keep your eyes peeled towards the end of September. Like lots of interesting data sets to be released then.
That's incredible. So the seamless align mind dataset is a tool to recreate the dataset that they've collected, and other folks will definitely pick up this mantle. And this is like an incredible way for Facebook to kind of sidestep the responsibility, still release to us the tools, but also let open source run with it. Yeah, we had their hand up. Feel free to chime in, brother.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is an ongoing effort. It might look like it came out of nowhere, a model that can translate and create speech and listen to audio, but it's an ongoing effort from Meta's side over the past, I think, 2 years, both through NLB and also all the latest papers on multimodality. There have been a couple of them in the past years. And it's great to see that it's coming to reality. The whole plan, the whole agenda of one model, multimodality, everything is connected. And yeah, just first of all, I'm training a model right now that on a language that doesn't have a lot of data. So the translation part is is close to my heart. It's something I do, fine-tuning NLLB and also a little bit of Whisper because of the multimodality. It's something I'm handling nearly every day. Those type of playing with those type of models, and it's amazing to see the NLLB is an extremely high quality model. It's really good. But this one, I didn't get a time to play with it yet, but I assume it is high quality as well. And just one more thing, just as we say, I think 2 weeks already in a row, this is the third time multimodality in general. We know that if done correctly, it can improve models. The modalities influence each other, and we see multimodal models benefit from the multimodality to both modalities over fine focused models. It's not always the case. It's a challenge, an engineering challenge to get to this stage, but Meta definitely on their previous paper had demonstrated that the speech influenced the text performance really well. And now we see the next iteration of that, where you see, end to end, both modalities. Anyway, amazing to see. For me, it was surprising that it came out this quick after the previous paper. I think it was maybe a month and a half, or I'm just living in AI time and I think everything is closer than it really is. But the previous paper didn't come that long ago, for sure.
Absolutely. And it seems that there's like multiple efforts within Meta to work towards this goal. And VB, I completely agree. I think the working towards productizing this in all of the products that Meta has, whether it's the Facebook main, the WhatsApp, Instagram, Threads now, I think they're working towards adding this everywhere. And I think one point to highlight here before we move on, unless folks on stage have additional stuff to say that we forgot, is that they've released two models, M40 large, which is 2.3 billion parameters, and medium, which is 1.2 billion parameters. And I haven't looked at the actual size, but I think the large one beats Whisper large. And they also released a small model called with 281 million, and they target the small model for on-device inference. And I see Zenova clapping his hands because 281 million parameters quantized by 4 bits is fairly possible to run on device. And if it runs on device, it probably can run on Node and Transformers.js. Nova?
Yep, definitely. That's definitely one of the most exciting parts for me, at least, for such a project like this. Sorry. And I've already posted it on the Optimum GitHub repo, just to see what levels of interest there is, because as you may know, Transformers.js uses Onyx runtime to run these models in the browser. I should probably have given it a bit of an introduction. Now that I remember what
Yeah,
VB
please do.
was subjected to. So hi everyone, Zenova here, Joshua. So I'm the creator of Transformers.js, which is a JavaScript library for that allows you to run Hugging Face transformers in the browser, as well as Node.js or Dino or whatever JavaScript environment you're looking at. And I recently did, in fact, join Hugging Face, which I'm really excited about. It's been quite a journey already in the past, what is it, like 3 months, 4 months, being officially part of the Hugging Face team. So that's quite fun. And yeah, so anyway, getting back to the topic of discussion. For the seamless M4T models, the smaller ones around, I think as you mentioned, around 280 million parameters, which 8-bit quantizes 280 megabytes. Eventually that goes lower, but quantize we've seen is quite powerful. Somehow it still works. We'd ask these questions of how on earth does a 4-bit, I've seen 2-bit quantize models, which it's actually insane how
let's
that
not get carried away here. So please,
I know.
brief conversation for the audience. Primer. Quantization is the way to reduce the model's weights. So like the file do we get to run the model significantly while preserving or hoping to preserve kind of quality of the model, right? So we literally just reduce size. It's like compression, but different. And we need this to be able to download models locally on our devices and not have them hold space.
Yeah, exactly. So with the seamless M4T small variants of the model, around 280 megabytes, something like that can definitely run. I've ran, the biggest one I've got is around 1 billion parameters, running that in the browser, which is, I'm surprised that somehow worked. So definitely 200 to 300 million parameters is very possible. And I think another thing that's quite beneficial is, in a browser context at least, is the many web and let's say web audio API or whatever. The browsers just give a really easy way to access those APIs which are available on your computer, as demonstrated by, for example, the Whisper Web demo, which I released a while ago, which allows you to run Whisper directly in the browser. And now with seamless M4T, that's just opens up the possibilities to everything that VB spoke about earlier, where it's actually mind-boggling to understand how there's somehow a multi-dimensional space that encompasses like all languages. That's wild. I don't know. I think that's amazing.
That's great. Josh,
Also,
thanks for coming up and sharing the excitement. And brief comment before I move on, because
it's not only that there is a multi-dimensional space that somehow all languages are in, and it can compress all languages, is that 600 million parameters model, it can even do it really well. I was blown away by how good the smaller versions of NLB are. Of course, the bigger 54 billion parameters model is really good. Okay, we all know. But if you tried the smallest one, it's surprisingly good as well. It's just amazing to see, really.
I was afraid of this. I was afraid that this one model release would take up the whole space, and hopefully it doesn't. But you guys can hopefully hear in our voices the excitement. And as we move to the next segment of our updates, I just want to give a brief introduction again to some folks who just joined. You're welcome to the ThursdAI space. This is a live recording, and then it turns into a newsletter updates that you're welcome to subscribe to if you aren't able to make this. We have a new website called ThursdAI.news. Very easy to remember. And I want to thank all the hosts, all the co-hosts and specialists like VB here, who actually works on voice, audio, machine learning, and AI. And I really appreciate everyone here who chimes in. And I see some folks in the audience who I should shout out, Harrison and Sigil and Nathaniel, welcome, and Morgan from Weights and Biases. And we are joined by quite a community of folks who all want to learn together and get updates together. And I see LDJ as well. And as we learn together, we also share this via this podcast and newsletter and these spaces. And definitely follow everybody here on stage. Your algorithm will thank you, and your Twitter will stop showing you bad stuff and will start showing you good stuff. With that, I want to move on to, if we start talking about LLaMa code, then we're not gonna get to the other stuff. But okay, let's talk about LLaMa code, and let's try to cap this at, I don't know, 5 minutes, and I'll stop talking. Everybody wants to go first and share what LLaMa code is and how we're excited. And I see LDJ in the audience. Please feel free to come up, Luigi.
My name's LDJ, real name Luigi. I work with the news research. We put out models that you may have heard of, like Hermes, and I recently released a 70 billion parameter model called Puffin. Puffin was also the first LLaMA 2 third-party fine-tune, besides the official LLaMA chat model, as far as I know. And so, yeah, for Code LLaMA, hopefully we can get maybe news can also be the first ones to release a LLaMA code fine-tune, like third-party, so that would be interesting. But just looking at the human eval scores, the past one for GPT-4 is 67, for GPT3.5 it's 48, and for Code LLaMA 34B it's 48.8. And so, yeah, it slightly beats GPT 3.5 already, which is huge in and of itself. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here. But yeah, just huge potential, fine-tuning potential. Yeah, I don't know what else to say beyond that. If anybody else wants to
No,
give
thank
some
you.
input.
That's great. That's great. So I will just say a few things to the audience who may be not as participant in the fine-tuning community, which you're such a great member of. The LLaMA 2 was released with commercial license, a month and a week ago. And LLaMA 2, when folks looked at the stats, they looked at the different evaluations that these models run through in different scores. And the human eval score is a score, I think, released by OpenAI with a bunch of programming questions that they run these models on. And they expect an output, and everybody was disappointed by the poor performance for LLaMA on code specifically. And I distinctly remember, I think I had this tweet on this, where somebody asked Jan LeCun on Threads, like, hey, why is it so sucky on code something? And Jan LeCun said, be patient. And I was like, Jan, we were patient. And now they're releasing a model that, can you say again, it beats GPT 3.5 on human eval?
So yes, ironically, on OpenAI's own benchmark, it beats GPT 3.5 slightly. Yes, on pass one. So that's pass one is like the most representative of real world human use. And yeah, I think that's the most fair score. According to me.
I think that's incredible. And that's what, a month after they released the model. Go ahead, Mr. And then
Yeah, we got to keep in mind this has much newer data now, so I think it will be a lot more useful in that regard. The data set is somewhat new. In my case, what I'm going to do with it, with the 7B model, is just get it to run in 3-bit or 4-bit mode on my phone, because I was able to get the Siri shortcuts to talk to ChatGPT code interpreter. And then I was able to just paste that code straight on the phone and run it right from my 3-year-old iPhone 12. And you can install a transformers library in straight Python on it. You can make API calls. And now you have a model that can write that code much better. But that's pretty interesting. That opens up like a lot of use cases. Someone, because you could not have internet at all, and then you can just walk around with this thing in a mine or wherever you are, and just start troubleshooting networking or like troubleshooting stuff. It's really practical in that regard. So the fact that it is GPT-3, it is as good as GPT 3.5 on code is a pretty big deal. And I think with some prompt engineering where you get it to run as an agent, where you run it multiple times, I think that score would go up higher too. So I am actually quite excited. And for the 13B model, the benchmarks look really good. It doesn't lose that much points. So that, I think that looks like the ideal one in terms of like performance and something that you can run on consumer hardware and what you get out of it.
So I hear you, Nistan, and also I want to point folks to the last episode of ThursdAI and the last special episode where we interviewed folks, Nathaniel, I see you in the audience, and we interviewed Ariel and Cole, folks who fine-tuned LLaMa 2 Platypus and then overshot it, and then also joined the Lyman Labs and then fine-tuned the 13B model of LLaMa 2. I'm not talking about code. I'm going back a week, just a week. And a month after LLaMa 2 was released, the open source fine-tune community joined together and got the 13B parameter model, like way smaller model, to perform almost as well as the 70B at the time of Meta released it. And it happened a month after. And so what we're getting now is exciting, but definitely it's exciting because it's just the start. And I can't wait to see all of the friends from the fine-tune community just come together and say, you know what, Meta, thank you for releasing the start for us, but we got it from here. We got it. Yam and then Vidi.
First, I just want to say a couple of things in general about code. This is more important than simply code per se. Of course, code is cool because we are all in this together. So everyone is using code every day. So we are all excited about a coding model for sure. But there is more to it. There is a theory. It's not, we don't have any proof for this theory, but there is a theory that the high performance, the high reasoning performance that we see in the most powerful models to date are due to also being trained on code, on extensive amounts of code. We know that they're trained on extensive amount of code because they can code, but so far there seems to be something that is different between just powerful models and the closed models. So there is a theory going on that the difference is code. This theory already sparked people to try and fine-tune star coder and try to fine-tune coding-based models to do other things and check. And as it turns out, coding models are extremely good as base models in general. So this model is extremely important for this type of experiment as well. And it's great to see. And one more thing I want to say about the eval scores. GPT-4's eval score is 67, I think, 60 something. I'm not in front of it, but it doesn't matter. What I want to say is that GPT-4 has another capability. It can self-reflect. And when you take this into consideration, the eval score, you allow it to self-reflect and correct its own code and correct bugs, it is far better. It's above 90. And it is an achievement for sure, but it is important to take in consideration that GPT-4 in real-life use in chat or as an agent is much, much, much more robust. And it's important to take this into consideration because as far as I know, there aren't any data sets that demonstrate this ability. So there aren't many models, fine-tuned models that are capable of doing this themselves. There is a small hole to cover here, but it is a huge achievement for sure. Absolutely. And one last thing, look at the paper. The paper includes something that we talked about last week, the trend of using feedback. A model is trained on its own outputs. In this paper, the model generates code, and then they use tests to make sure that the code passes the test. If the code is passing the test, they use it for self-instruct to reinforce the model on future training runs. And the data set, really important to say actually, that parts of the data sets, okay, they are not released, but they are not comprised of open source data sets, which is fine. And it's also understandably not released. which means that if we further fine tune it on open data sets, the model will see new information. So this model encodes in its own weight information that is not present in open data sets. So there is a lot of room for improvements, and I don't know, future is bright. It's a really good thing that we got this model now.
So what you're saying is I should fine tune the doctor on the coder instead.
I don't say that you should or shouldn't do anything, but I say that you might want to consider if there isn't the base knowledge that you need, because I know that you work with a model that has a lot of base knowledge that is relatable, but if there is not, and you just need the reasoning, a coding model is a good base model. Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, I just want to like echo what Yam said, right? Even like internally, like I remember when we had released Starcoder, like there were a bunch of experiments that we ran to fine tune Starcoder on instruction data set. And we found it to be like incredibly good with not as much data. Like in general, like code models are really good for not just code related tasks, but beyond as well. I would massively support what Yam said there. And I think I just wanted to take a minute to just like talk about what all have they released, right? Because that's important. So what they did was they took the foundational LLaMa 2 models, right? So 7B, 13B, and 34B models. And then they did code training on top of it on 500 billion tokens, right? And these were trained using an infilling objective function, so
Still
to
in the
speak,
middle of that,
right? So wherein
yeah.
like, yeah, so like essentially fill in the middle, and so 500 billion tokens of that. And then they created 3 downstream models from it, or 3 type of downstream models. The first one is a Python model, which was like a model specifically for Python, which essentially took the 500 billion token trained model, fine-tuned foundational model, fine-tunes it further on 100 billion tokens of Python specific code data. And then on top of that, does 20 billion long context fine-tuning, right? On top of it. So, and then you get essentially 3 Co LLMA versions, which is 7B, 13B, and 34B. And at the same time, they just took the base Co LLMA, which was 500 billion, which was foundational model trained for 500 billion more tokens, trained with 500 billion more tokens. And then they just did like long context fine tuning on top of that. So essentially there's, so, and then from that, they created another segment of model, on which they further fine tuned it. They further instruction fine tuned it on 5 billion tokens, right? In general, I think what my sort of bet would be is that as soon as we have better support for that, say within transformers and other ecosystem libraries start incorporating it as well, because like in terms of architecture, I think it's pretty much the same. There are like some differences in terms of the vocab size, so it should be like quite easy for any library that supports LLaMa models to then support code LLaMa models as well. So I'm betting like in the next week or two, we see a lot more further fine-tuned models, and also like further instruction fine-tuned models popping up on Open LLM leaderboard and also on the big code leaderboard, and beating the current code LLaMa models. So I feel like we're just like scratching the surface of something that's going to be like truly revolutionary, and we're going to see the results within a week or two.
This is
So yeah,
this is very consistent with what we said before about the voice models as well, right? Meta releases something, it's great, it's just the start. Pharrell, you had a comment, and folks, just introduce Pharrell. Pharrell is running one of the greatest communities that I've seen of like fine tuners, and everybody's there. And if you want to join, also welcome. And if you want to dive deep into this a little more, we had a full deep dive interview last week on ThursdAI. Pharrell, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I just wanted to ask Yam and VB, what are some good high quality coding data sets that could be used to push this model further? Also, in the case of Star Coder, I saw that you guys did the very small, very short training runs with just a lot of high quality data. Can you maybe give us the parallel or what's going to happen with Co LLMA?
Farrell, you broke up a bit there at the end. Yeah, VB and Yam, if you want to pick up this question briefly, and then we want to move up to updates and LBJ as well.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to keep it very simple. We used the stack, which is a permissive dataset with opt-out, which is essentially made from you can see the exact composition of different languages that are available in it. It is a fairly large dataset that is completely permissive. And so we use that for the Big Code project. And from what I remember, in terms of instruction fine-tuning, we just use the current readily available ones. I'm not too sure about that. But if you want to further sort of fine-tune the model, then I would recommend doing it on one of the subsets of stack and just pick something like Python, or if you're pick a language subset. And then within that, there are a couple of columns which can help you decide whether or not you want to keep a particular code entry within the dataset or not. And yeah, just play around with it and create a small dataset. I think there are also scripts that allow you to convert your entire a collection of GitHub repositories to the dataset format as well. So you can look into that as well. And that's something that we yesterday launched as a safe coder sort of offering, wherein you can essentially bring your own datasets and you get essentially a on device or more like a private endpoint for code-based models as well. Just to summarize, look into the stack on datasets, look into the scripts that allow you to convert current datasets into stack format. This includes deduplication as well. And third would be look into safe coder if you're interested in that. But yeah, just that.
Thank you, VB. And also you mentioned fine-tune on specific language, and we actually saw kind of two models released with Co LLMA. And one of them is Co LLMA Python, which is a language specialized variation that's trained on or further fine-tuned. They did what you basically said. Your instructions right now, they also followed and released a model that continued to train on 100 billion tokens of just Python code. And they're excited about this because Python is used for anything for language, and PyTorch is the whole community is around Python right now. And so I find it also very interesting. I haven't seen specific metrics on that version, whether or not that's better at human eval or not.
I just wanted to mention, I think something that can even have this give benefits possibly over GPT-4 even is the fact that Llama 2 is trained on data up to 2023, mostly up to late 2022. And that alone could have a big advantage because then the base model actually has a knowledge of APIs and documentation from late 2022, sometimes even early 2023. And that's something that GPT-4 just objectively cannot have unless you give it that documentation within the context. And so just from that standpoint alone, it might just be clearly better in a lot of different use cases that people have that are with a lot more recent frameworks.
Just one last thing before we move away from this topic. I don't know how we didn't say it before, but it has to be said. 100K context window, okay? At the middle, casually at the middle of the paper.
Wait, sorry. Can you say this again, please, slowly? What?
I was just
really simple. The sentence is really simple. 100K context window. You can Control F this into the paper and read for yourself. Okay, at the middle of the paper.
So wait, you can
one of the variations.
100K.
One of the variations. Okay, in detail, one of the variations of the models, or a couple of them, but at least one is trained specifically for very long context windows, and then even further extrapolated with all the known tricks. And they test it on 100K context windows, and they say and show that it's extremely good. And it can respond correctly on very long context windows, and that it benefits because source code, you can put a full GitHub repository in a 100K context window, and it makes sense when you need to respond to, a lot of context about code. I think it is the longest open source model to date. And just to let everyone know. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for this. Like one last thing. It's like Steve Jobs and saying, hey, one last thing, iPhone. 100K.
For a couple of minutes, I had the hand up, and I'm like, for a couple of minutes, how did we do it? We have we must not move to the next topic. We must say this.
I literally control F the blog post. Nothing says it. It's literally probably in the paper. So folks, breaking news, some alpha for you. And Yam, please post this, and everybody please retweet Yam as well. That's just, it's incredible. And I guess this warrants at least a few more minutes of discussion. Listen, go ahead.
I was just going to say for the audience, 100K, that means you can add 100 pages of that's your prompt. Yeah, because 1,000 tokens is about like 1,200 words sometimes. It can be more or less in code. Yeah, think about it as 100 pages of stuff.
I wonder how much we can extend it even further, right? This context window, can we apply further scaling to get it up to 200K or whatever?
Look, the problem is actually running it. Okay, the model can support 100K context window, but we need the memory to actually run this thing, and it's not easy. But yeah, it's great.
Somebody page Team Dietmers and have them work their Q magic on this as well. So
you can consume, you can consume up to 1 megabyte per token of context. So if you're going to run 100K context window, you might end up needing another 100 gigabytes of GPU memory. Just to roughly think, it's not going to be that. It could be a bit less or a bit more, but that ballpark. So yeah, that's the difficult part there.
The support though is great, and definitely changes in architectures and the themes that we have in terms of running cheaper, easier, faster definitely work towards this goal. On this topic or next one, because we want to move on.
Yeah, just one real quick thing is that they also didn't release a 70 billion parameter model, right? So imagine that this 34B beats the LLaMa 2.7B on a lot of different benchmarks. Now imagine if the 70B version of Code LLaMA, how does it perform, and when are they going to release that, and if they are actually going to release it at all? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, so we're gonna wait for that. So now, since we don't have a lot of time left, I do want to cap it under 2 hours, and I did want to thank everybody for joining. I'm just gonna run through incredible stuff, and I apologize that I don't have a lot to say on everyone, but like definitely check out the newsletter. I'll give links to everything. I don't even have time to look up the tweets as I usually do. Somebody please pin the stuff that if you have access to them. Hugging Face released an incredible new vision model called IDEFICS. Maybe actually, if you have 2 words on this, or Zenova, I would love from you guys. It's a multimodality vision model and text model that understands text and multiple images that you can give it. And I've tried it, and you guys know that we love multimodality here. You guys know this, right? And we've talked about Niva last week, and we've talked about Lava previously. And this one is the best one that I've seen. I uploaded pictures of my kids and asked them to identify what they wore, and they did that. And literally, it's really good. I'm very surprised, and Niva was really bad, and this one's really good. Vivi, please, if you have a few words on this, I would love to hear.
So it's essentially an open reproduction of Flamingo, right? Flamingo was this multimodal model, image text model, touted by DeepMind, I think, a year or two back. I'm not sure about the exact timelines. And just for some background, this project has been like in the making for more than a year now, right? Internally within Hugging Face, and it's essentially a replication of Flamingo, right? Along with so the model comes in 2 flavors. One is an 80 billion parameter model, and the other is a 9 billion parameter model. And then there is also instruction tuned models for the same, right? There is a Hugging Face space, which I think is linked somewhere in the pinned tweets. So you can like look into that and play around with that. Along with that, we also released an image text sort of data set to pre-train such large models. This is a fully permissive data set. This is permissive with like opt-out. So you can like use this data set for your own training runs as well, and to further fine-tune other image text models as well. In general, in terms of benchmarks, this beats all available open source models. And I say open source specifically over here, and it has some really good capabilities of just identifying different patterns within the images, and also like just to try and create narratives from images and so on. There's lots more to be done here, but this is just the start, and these models are like quite the shit, I would say.
Yes, this one literally blew me away. I had literally 5 minutes to test this. VB, your new motto is, this is just the start, guy. Every time you come up, you talk about something and you get us excited about like the potential of going forward. Folks, please play around with IDEFICS. It's really good. It's really good at counting as well, which other models are really bad at. So like I saw a few things and said, hey, count the number, identification as well. It's really great. And we're going to keep seeing updates here. Zenova briefly, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I also wanted to add on to that with some really, it's quite funny use cases of it. I don't quite know how to pen something to the Jumbotron, as you call it, but if you could pen Julian's comment about, it was him playing around with it yesterday. And some of the examples that he gave are it's quite amazing that a model can distinguish and not get fooled by some of these things. If you can pull it up. So one of the little demos, he actually made a little demo Hugging Face space where you can play around with this. And what he did is that he took a picture of himself, just normally. Then he asked the model, what do you see? And then it responds, I see a man sitting on a couch looking at the camera. He's wearing glasses and has a beard. The couch is located in a room with a white wall in the background. Amazing. That's flawless. I didn't see anything wrong with that. Then what he does, he tries to fool it. And he takes a little, like a stuffed toy, and puts it in front of his face. And it says, then he asks the model, what do you see? Or basically, what does the model see? And the model responds, I see a person wearing a dog mask, which covers their entire face. The mask has a black nose and ears, and the person is wearing a brown hoodie. That's all exactly right. The person is holding a stuffed animal, which appears to be a dog. The scene says set indoors with a white wall in the background. That's flawless. And it's quite amazing. Yeah, there we go. You can see it on the Jumbotron. I think that's such a fun, it knows that there's a stuffed animal in front of the human. Anyway, it's funny. But when I was talking to him about this in the DMs about this, some exciting use cases, and one of the use cases that was brought up months ago with GPT-4 is the collaboration with Be My Eyes, where, for those unaware, it's basically it's a service but distributed as like a mobile application which helps visually impaired people. And what they do is that they, as a sighted person, you could sign up to the service and provide your eyes to those who are visually impaired, where if someone is visually impaired and has they need assistance with something, they would ping the service and someone available would then connect to via video call and then help the visually impaired person navigate a problem that they're facing. And one of the original use cases, or one of the original integrations with GPT-4's multimodality, was the collaboration with Be My Eyes, and they were one of the first companies to, I think maybe only at this point, play around with and have access to it. And giving like an open replication of a model with very quite amazing, as we've just shown, capabilities, I think is really great and has really great potential for even like open replications of Be My Eye or assistance with those types of use cases, which I think is quite amazing. But I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thanks for adding this viewpoint, Joshua, because accessibility is very important, and these models that we get very excited about vision, we get very excited about language, vision and language and voice, but vision is very important as well for models to also understand. There's a great talk with, and I keep repeating this, but please go and see it. Great talk by Yulia Sotskova, chief scientist from OpenAI, with Jensen from NVIDIA, where he talks about training GPT-4 with vision built in actually helps GPT-4 and other models to be much more knowledgeable about the real world. And yeah, this kind of connects to your point from before, where like code helps, vision also helps, by the way. And now we have a great one to play around with. Go ahead, Jan, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I just want to say exactly on that. And because this model is surprisingly good, it might be worth just taking the text decoder and trying it or further fine tuning it on its own, because it might be really well, simply because it was influenced by I don't know if it was tried already, but it is interesting to see like how, what influence did it have, because all of you, everyone who played with this model is blown away. And I'm sure, so it has to be more than just transcribing what is the image. It has to be something a little bit more. Everyone is blown away. Okay, so there is something to this model that is different, and we connect to the whole multimodality thing. And just one question: where do you get the data for? Because
yeah, if you don't mind, we'll reserve questions for the next space.
Okay,
DMs.
No problem.
Sorry, dude,
Yeah.
we're over time, and I want to give people the very important update that we still have. OpenAI released the fine-tuning API. Did you guys see that? I missed it. When OpenAI previously to ChatGPT, they had a GPT-3, I think. You could send them your own data and keep fine-tuning GPT-3 with your own data. And when they released ChatGPT API, were back in, I want to say December. And when they released GPT-4 in March, no longer fine-tunable. So you weren't able to anymore send your data into these models, and everybody told you, hey, use prompting. And I think this is my gut feeling. The OpenAI sees the fine-tuning world in open source getting exploded, and they talked to us about the roadmap a couple of months ago, and they said that the fine-tuning is coming. They also said vision is coming. It's coming slowly, but vision hopefully will come at some point as well. But this week, OpenAI released the GPT-4, 3.5, not 4, 3.5 ChatGPT fine-tune API. You now can use this. It's a little bit expensive because they have to run the model for you, etc. But you now can fine-tune as an enterprise, as a company, you can fine-tune GPT 3.5 on your tasks, on your data. And I haven't had time to play with this yet because I'm very excited about open source fine-tuning. But definitely very important for folks. Folks have been waiting for this, and I guess we'll see the results after they play with this a little bit. Moving on to AI and like moving on from this like one thing that could have held like a full space 2 weeks ago, right? Just moving on from fine-tune in one of the best APIs in AI in the world. Just moving on. But yeah, we'll do that. AI Art and Diffusion section. Let's go there a little quick. I want to shout out all my friends from Stable Diffusion. I want to send big hearts to Imad for chatting it and open sourcing Stable Diffusion, changing the world, at least in the as art and diffusion models, and definitely changing my life, because when Stable Diffusion released, this was the first AI model that I ran myself and not used APIs for. And this led me to learn a little bit about open source, and this led to this whole thing. And this was a year ago. And I was just like, if you don't mind in chat, throw out a little heart for Stable Diffusion if you used it. It's been a year, folks. This like crazy ride that we're on. It's been just a year. And so I want to shout out everybody in Stable Diffusion, all my friends there, all the people who like brought us incredible stuff from there. We've talked about the difference between SDXL 1.0 and Stable Diffusion 1.4 that released a year ago, which is incredible. we saw just an unimaginable explosion in the quality of these models and the quality of the outputs, and the images that we now generate look nothing like a year ago. They look way better. Some of them are indistinguishable from reality, right? We all saw the Pope from Midjourney. Just like I want to put a landmark here. It's been a year, and the timelines are getting shorter. It gets better quicker than before because of the open source community, because of all of you who fine-tune, because of all of us who contribute with thumbs up and thumbs down. I find the person incredible, and celebratory space and shout out to 1 year of Stable Diffusion being an open source. And hopefully the open sourcing of Stable Diffusion also helped other folks do open source. I think we all remember Galactica, maybe. Yam talked about this multiple times. It was a great model, and Nistan, you talked about this. And then Facebook Meta pulled it back because of the outcry, because somebody got it to do something bad. And I think after Stable Diffusion, everybody saw that the world didn't end after a model that can generate nudity is out there and everybody's using this, right? The journalists keep writing about, oh my God, clutching persons, about, oh my God, somebody generates so much AI porn, though like there's not a lot of porn on the internet anyway. But the amount of stuff that we did get and the amount of world not ending, I found it incredible. And putting aside the folks who started hating on AI art and that whole love hate thing, I think Stable Diffusion did an incredible thing, and I want to just like comment and thank them for it. And it's been a great year for me personally connected to this, but also for everybody else. And adding on this, at the one birthday of Stable Diffusion, a new company, I think folks ex-Googlers, released Ideogram, and I think I pinned it to the top of the tweet. And it's a new model. It's not open source, but you can go and for free use it. And it's really good. It's really good with text. I don't know if you guys seen my tweet. I asked it to generate a grumpy cat holding join ThursdAI spaces. And I did that perfectly. It was like very nice. It looks really good. Definitely not open source. Also, Midjourney is not open source. Everybody's still in that Discord, right? Midjourney is the biggest Discord, I think, ever. And yeah, check out the Ideogram, play with it, let us know what you think. And I think this is it. The last thing of the updates before we conclude the space is my personal shout out. Folks from friends of the pod, folks on my timeline recommended Cursor. And my friends, Latent Space Pod, Swix, and Alessio, they had the chat with the guy behind Cursor. And if you don't know what Cursor is, this clone of VS Code, if you all use VS Code, right? Where you can import your VS Code with one click, which is beautiful, so you can get started today. And it has AI built in way more than Copilot. We're moving from a autocomplete to everything. There's a button there inside your console that when you have an error, you just click a button and GPT-4 starts analyzing your error. You don't have to copy paste. This on its own like saves, I don't know, 17 clicks. They also have an agent built in there that can create and kickstart a repository for you, right? Like it runs, does a loop, and you can use your own token for GPT-4. So you can like literally not use their services. You can input your own token and then have your own GPT-4. It embeds your whole repo into embed, so it knows, and you can like tag when you ask for things in the side chat. There's a side chat. You can add files, right? So you can say add this file, add that file, or add documentation. And you can add documentation to the context, and they have some smart stuff that chunks it. Folks, really, this is a whole new experience. I had very small time for the past week to try and coding, but Cursor, shout out to Cursor. And the shout out came because somebody said they pivoted away from AI agents, and somebody else like Champion said, see, AI agents don't really work. And I'm here to tell you that like at least the agents inside Cursor, they work very well. So I don't usually shout out stuff. I think it's beautiful to see. And with that, I think we'll conclude the updates for this ThursdAI for August 24. I want to say a brief few things. So first of all, we have a new website, ThursdAI.news. If you missed any of this, if you enjoy for the full space, a full space is always available. Recording is available. Transcription is available. If you followed half of what VB said or Yam said or Pharrell, and you want to follow all of it, and you want to roll back, a full transcription is always available for you as well on ThursdAI. I also do like a summary podcast, but this week I'm just going to release. This was beautiful, and thank you everybody for coming and having an orderly discussion. Thank you everybody in the audience who participated. If you are not signed up to the ThursdAI newsletter, why not? Like, why wouldn't you be signed up at this point? Sign up, it's good. But trust me, you won't get spam. You'll get amazing interviews with folks on stage and other folks who I am very lucky to host and interview. We're here every ThursdAI to talk about all the incredible updates because there's just so much. There's so much good happening that even folks who are hyper-focused on one field, they may miss the other fields, right? And we all learn together and we all bring news together and we discuss them as they see them. And oftentimes, like today, there's breaking news like LLaMa code released as I was writing kind of the notes for this. And I find it incredible that this community comes together. Nistan, you said something in the beginning that many people, I think, missed. That you said that you need some compute, and then somebody from the space joined you and then told you, hey, here's some compute. And yeah, there seems to be a community forming here. And I very much appreciate every one of you in this community, everyone's place, whether you're in the audience or on stage, whether you're signed up to the newsletter or just listening on Apple News or Spotify. And with that, thank you, folks. It's been a great ThursdAI. We're a little bit over but I think it was important, and I think we went in deep, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you all. Cheers. Bye-bye.